Well, thank you all for joining us. Senator Klobuchar and I and Congressman Smith are pleased to be here with our Secretaries of State to talk about a Safe at Home program that both of them are responsible for implementing and understand the challenges of. But because of those challenges, we're going to be filing legislation in the House and the Senate that will ensure that this program designed to protect people who really need to have their home address very confidentially held, that this will be designed to see that that happens. And I think both Secretary Ashcroft and Secretary Simon have some examples of what's happened to individuals who, while the law's been set up to protect them, don't have at this point all the protection that they feel like that they should have and that we feel like that they should have. And so Senator Klobuchar and I get a chance to work on lots of legislation together. Last night we were at the event, the Angels in Adoption event. We co-chair the Congressional Caucus on Adoption, and so we're always glad to do things together. And Senator Klobuchar, if you want to talk about this bill a little bit as well.
Roy. Well, thank you so much, and thanks for your leadership. And it's great to be here with these two Secretary of States. And I won't compete with the fact that Minnesota had the highest voter turnout last year in the country, right, Steve?
That's right.
Okay, but I won't. I'm not gonna. No, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna start something. And that the Twins just made the play. I'm not gonna go there either. Okay, so we're here for a really important bill, as Roy said, and that is a bill to protect the information for victims of domestic abuse. I spent 8 years as a prosecutor running the biggest prosecutor's office in our state, Minneapolis and 45 suburbs, and we had a number of cases of stalking where victims would try to hide their whereabouts, and sometimes, sadly, they were tracked down. And you realize when you do these domestic violence cases that it's not just one victim, it's really an entire family, an entire community. That was really brought home to me once when we had a case where a woman was killed by her husband, actually, after trying to report things and not a lot had been done. And it was a horrible case, and he brought her body down to another state, and the child was in the car. And when they got back, he finally turned himself in. And what I remember about the case is some of the gruesome details, but what I most remember is that that mom had an identical twin who lived in Russia, actually. And that identical twin came for the funeral, her mom's identical twin. The little girl ran through the airport, our staff was there with her, and ran through the airport and hugged her mom's sister and said, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," because she looked the same and she'd never seen her before. And it just reminds you that this crime, again, is not just about one victim, it's about an entire community. And when you think of it that way, you think about the community protecting these victims. And one of the ways we protect them is by keeping their information secure. 36 states have already implemented Address Confidentiality Programs, and I'm grateful that these Secretary of States have come to talk about that. Our bill would ensure that federal agencies and courts recognize these programs so that victims' personal information is not available to their stalkers or abusers. And I'm very glad that Congressman is here and that this legislation, it will not just be bipartisan, but bicameral. So thank you so much for including me. And we will turn it over to Representative Smith.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with both of the senators and the secretaries. This is a great example of how whenever there is a problem, a solution is figured out, and it's a bipartisan approach. These secretaries saw that the federal government, the federal laws, were not right in line with what was necessary to protect victims of domestic violence. And this legislation is that fix to make sure that victims of domestic violence privacy is their privacy. It's not the government's privacy, and that they are highly and well protected. Secretary Ashcroft called me several months ago about this legislative fix, and happy to be a part of it. Glad that they figured it out, and good to see that I believe the Secretary of State has voted unanimously to support this legislation. And so hopefully we can do the same on the House and the Senate side. I want to thank my colleagues on the House side as well, Kirsten Sinema, Joe Kennedy, and Vicki Harsler, that has also joined onto this legislation. Thank you. Jay Ashcroft.
It is a real privilege for me to be able to be involved in protecting individuals that, frankly, have been tragically treated. If you don't know what the state confidentiality address programs are, these are programs for individuals, generally speaking. There's some variance in the 36 programs for people that have been victimized with rape, domestic violence, human trafficking, stalking. And this program gives them a substitute address that they can use so that when they're working in their states with businesses, they can go ahead and give an address we give them instead of the real home address. So we separate the ability of their abuser to find them and to continue the abuse. This does not just set free the individual participant, but their family. And it breaks the cycle of violence and gives them the understanding of normalcy and the ability to restart their lives and to be successful. We have had concerns where judges at the state level have required participants to give out their address in open court, which makes it a public record that now their accuser knows where to find them and to continue the abuse. Additionally, we've had problems where we've had individuals in our program that have had to deal with federal programs, or we had an individual that wanted to buy a firearm to protect herself and her family at home. And she faced that terrible choice if she could either give over her real address to that gun store and to the federal government and be able to hopefully protect her children with that firearm at home, but now her accuser would know where she lived. And this legislation does not create a new federal program. It does not require the federal government to spend a dime. All it does is it allows these participants in these state address confidentiality program to use this substitute address when they deal with the federal government, and to know that they will not be in any way punished for doing that. It costs in our state about $150 a year to separate the abuser from the person they intend to victimize. It is a wonderful thing to do. I am so blessed that the senators here, the representative, and my fellow secretaries of state have been helping with this. And I just wanted to have Secretary Simon come up, because when we were talking about this, he said, let's make it happen. And that's how it happens, when people from both sides come together and say, let's do it. Secretary Simon.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I too want to thank Senator Klobuchar, Senator Blunt, Representative Smith, and most of all, Secretary Ashcroft, who really got the ball rolling on this. I can tell you that in Minnesota, our Address Confidentiality Program, known as the Safe at Home Program, saves lives. I know that because people who have been enrolled in the program tell me that time and time again, as do their advocates, who very often pair them with the program, a program that many don't even know exists, even though it's been in existence for about 10 years. And as you've heard already, what has happened is there's inconsistent treatment at the federal level, a patchwork, if you will, of federal agencies. Some do acknowledge and respect the temporary and private address that these enrollees are given, and some don't. And what this legislation would do is make it uniform across the federal government. So at bottom, the Safe at Home program is about saving lives by providing protection. And this legislation, if it becomes law, will make the entire federal government a partner, a true partner in that protection. Thank you very much. It's my honor to lend my voice to this legislation.
Yes, Secretary Simon and I would be very happy to answer any questions you have about the program. Anything else we probably aren't going to know the answers to. So you could keep it to that.
Then we'll give those.
I don't think so, because all this program does is it doesn't create a federal rubric. It doesn't create the federal program. It just says that if someone is a participant in that state program, they can use that substitute address with the federal government. If they're not part of one of the states that has this program, they can continue to do what they have been doing previously. This just protects those programs. It really is that idea of what works in Minnesota isn't necessarily the best way to do it in Missouri or Arizona or other places. It allows the states to best serve their individuals, and then the federal government accepts that. Yeah, and what I should mention is these are not individuals we don't know their actual address for. Our programs have the real addresses. We forward their mail on to them. We accept legal service and forward that on to them. So it's not a place to hide yourself from the government. And there are ways in all of our programs for law enforcement, if they need to get to data, that can be done. But there are processes that make sure that it's not done willy-nilly and that those home private addresses aren't given away inappropriately. But for this individual, since she was trying to purchase a firearm, you know, we have regulations that say when she was going to do that, she had to fill out the federal form. And of course, she did not, you know, she could either, you know, she would be committing a felony. She wasn't going to do that, obviously. Yeah. We had a judge that on his own decided that he didn't like the form we used, called a witness and asked them to testify about things they had no direct knowledge of, and actually in open court ordered a participant to reveal her address, which of course put her back in jeopardy with her abuser. This is just a simple way to keep those addresses safe. And that's what it's about. It's about protect. I'm sorry, Steve, you feel free
Well,
to.
I would say we've had similar circumstances in Minnesota. Our remedy was a couple of years ago in 2015 to pass legislation that further specified the conditions by which judges could order the disclosure of an address, make it frankly tough to do. In Minnesota, the Safe at Home participants get a P.O. box. It's a P.O. box in the city of St. Paul, and that serves for both public sector and private sector purposes. Public sector and private sector in Minnesota. By the way, that's not the case in most of the states. Minnesota is one of the relatively few that covers both. So for all interactions with private businesses as well as the government, that P.O. box is, for all intents and purposes, their address. And when the federal government, in part at least, doesn't honor and respect and acknowledge that, that can lead to potential problems. That's the hole that we're trying to plug.
Our participants have their safe at home address on their driver's license. That's how concerned we are. If someone steals their wallet or their purse, they don't get that. But then when you're going through airport security, there could be a problem, or other documents like that. When they go to vote, it doesn't have their address on their voter registration card. There's an alphanumeric code. They have to actually call in to the election board. We verify them so they can vote. I understood it was a good program. Then I met the individual. I said, how can we not?
About 2,100 on any given day. And some people stay in for a short period of time, some people for a long period of time, but on any given day, it's reliably around 2,100.
Thank you very much.